Have you ever wondered how a simple question, just a little spark of curiosity, can snowball into a huge, world-changing discovery? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on the world of research. And don't worry, we're not talking about dusty old textbooks or super complicated formulas. Instead, think of this as a journey. We're going to map out the entire researcher's roadmap, from the very beginning all the way to that aha moment at the end.
So, here's the plan for our adventure. First, we'll start with the quest for knowledge, to really get what research is all about. Then we'll talk about defining your problem, because you gotta know where you're headed. After that, it's all about choosing your tools to make sure you got the right gear for the journey. Next, and this is the really cool part, we'll turn data to insights. And finally, we'll cover sharing your discovery, because finding something amazing is only half the fun, right?
All right, first stop on our map, the quest for knowledge. Now, this is about way more than just Googling something you're curious about. It's a structured, systematic hunt for answers that can actually stand up to some serious questioning. So, let's just jump right in with a big question. What's the real difference between a solid research finding and, just a really strong opinion? The answer, and you might find this surprising, isn't about the conclusion itself. It's all about the journey you took to get there. And this, right here, is the heart of it. Research is a systematic process. It's not random. It's a series of very deliberate steps that guide your whole investigation. Think of it like this. It's the difference between fumbling around in a dark room and methodically building a well-lit path that leads you straight to the answer. Okay, this slide points out a really important difference that honestly trips a lot of people up, the difference between methods and methodology. Methods are basically the tools you use, the how. Think surveys, interviews, or experiments. Methodology, on the other hand, is the bigger picture. It's the overall strategy, the why. It's your grand plan and the reason you chose those specific tools in the first place. You're not just saying, I used a survey, you're explaining why a survey was the absolute best tool for the job.
On to stage 2. If our research is a journey, then defining your problem is like picking your destination on a map. If your destination is vague, you could end up anywhere. But a really clear, well-defined problem, that gives you a laser focus for the entire trip.
So, how do you get from some big, vague idea to a super clear research problem? Well, you follow these 5 steps. You start off broad, then you really dig in. You try to understand the problem's roots, you see what other people have already found out, and you talk it through with others. By the time you're done, you've whittled that big, fuzzy idea down into a sharp, focused, and most importantly, a researchable question.
This is where a hypothesis becomes your best friend. And it's not just some random guess. This quote puts it perfectly. It's the focal point that keeps you on the right track. It's basically your compass for the whole project, making sure you don't get lost wandering down a bunch of dead ends.
Okay, so we've got our destination picked out, and we have our compass. Now it is time to pack our toolkit. In this section, we're going to figure out exactly which tools we need to bring along for this particular journey.
The first really big decision here is whether you're going quantitative or qualitative. Quantitative research is all about numbers, things you can count. It answers questions like how many or how much. Think polls, stats, that sort of thing. Qualitative research, though, is about the why. It's about getting into people's motivations and experiences, usually through things like in-depth interviews or focus groups. Now, this is a super fascinating part of the process, how we actually measure things. You can't just measure stuff any way you want, you got to use the right scale. A nominal scale is the most basic. It's just for categories, like gender, there's no order. An ordinal scale adds an order to those categories, like survey ratings. Good is better than bad, but the gap between good and neutral might not be the same as the gap between neutral and bad. An interval scale has equal gaps, but no true zero. Temperature is the classic example. 0 degrees doesn't mean no temperature. And finally, the ratio scale has it all: order, equal gaps, and a true zero. Things like your height or how much money you have. Getting this right is so important because it dictates what kind of analysis you can even do later on.
So, we've gone out and we've gathered all our data. But right now, it's pretty much just a giant jumble of numbers and words. This next stage is where the magic happens. This is where we turn all that raw information into actual, meaningful insight. And it's not just one step. It's a careful 4-part process. First, you edit. You got to clean up the data, check for mistakes. Then you code it, which is kind of like creating a shorthand so a computer can make sense of it. After that, you classify it, which just means grouping similar things together. And finally, you tabulate it, organizing everything into neat tables so you can actually start to see patterns emerge.
And here we are, the final stop on our roadmap. You've asked a great question, you've used the right tools, and you've uncovered some genuinely interesting insights. but the journey isn't really over until you share what you found with the world. This is where your research actually starts to make a real impact.
And no surprise here, sharing your findings follows a clear structure too. A good research report is basically a map of your journey for someone else to follow. You start with an intro that says what you did and why. You give a quick summary of the big takeaways. Then you dive into the nitty-gritty details of your results. After that, you talk about what it all means, the implications, and you wrap it all up with a nice, neat summary.
So why should any of this matter to you if you're not a professional researcher? Well, this quote absolutely nails it. Every single day, we are bombarded with research findings. Understanding the process behind it all is what gives you the power to tell the difference between good science and, well, junk science. It's what helps you make smarter decisions in a world that is just overflowing with information.
So I'm going to leave you with a little challenge. The next time you see a headline about some new study or a shocking statistic, don't just accept it. Ask the single most important question you can. How exactly did they figure that out? The moment you start doing that, you're no longer just a passive consumer of information. You become an active, critical thinker.